This week we're going to learn about weaving, and here are a couple examples of woven paper. Oftentimes when a person weaves, they will use what's called a loom, which is the device on which the weaving is done. That is typically a large wooden frame. We'll be weaving without a loom today. We'll be using paper to do our weaving, and we don't even need a loom. But two parts that we will have, we will be using what's called warp strips. They're going to be the up and down vertical strips that we weave through. So that's going to be a long strips warp. We will be using weft strips, loose strips of paper woven into the warp strips on the loom. So we will be doing an over-under pattern using our weft strips. The trick I use to try to remember this term, because it's a silly sounding word, I remember that weft rhymes with left, and your weft strips go from right to left or left to right. They go horizontally, right? Whereas your warp strips go up and down or vertical. So warp is up and down, weft rhymes with left, so it goes from right to left. So those are our terms for the day. You're going to need at least 2 pieces of paper. If you want to do more, you can do more. You could use color paper if you've got it, or you could use a piece of scrap paper that is okay to use with someone in your household. So I've got one paper, I used a 9x12 paper. You could use any size you want. You're going to fold it hamburger style so that it's two ends meet. Try to fold it nicely in half, like so. And that way, we've got the fold on the bottom and the open part at the top. You're gonna take a pencil. I like to use some sort of a straight edge at this point to kind of make a line across the top of mine. Just maybe a little wider than a finger, maybe a little bit more, maybe almost an inch. Using this green paper as my straight edge, anything that's straight will work. I have a dark color, so you might not see my lines super well, but I'll try to make it dark so you can see. I'm holding with one helper hand and making a nice line across the top. So now you can see I've got a line, a little bit slanted, but it will work pretty well. Now I'm going to cut strips all along here to create those warp strips. In order to do that, I want to use a straight edge so that I can kind of see how thick I want to cut each one. I'm kind of eyeballing it. If you want to measure, you can do that. I'm sort of going about the same for each strip. Then you'll take your second piece of paper and begin cutting weft strips, all about the same size. If you want to measure them, you are more than welcome to. Make sure they reach across the length of your whole warp. So now I'm going to use this main paper that I've cut lines in, and I'm actually going to cut all the way, pinching with one helper hand, all the way to the top. You want to go just past that top line that you drew, just to make sure that you have a place for all of your weft strips to go up to. The paper tends to want to slip, so you can open it up and reposition it. I like to cut, check my fold, and then cut again. Now that we've got all of the warp strips cut, we can open ours up, and we've got a nice long space to work with. If you have a clipboard, you can clip it. You could also tape it down if you want. I'm just gonna leave it as it is and see if I can work with it that way. So my warp strips are slightly wider than my weft. That'll be an interesting look to it. So we're just simply doing an over-under pattern as we weave our weft strips through. So I'm gonna go to simple. I'll do under first, over this strip, under. So you can kind of actually get it into a bit of a rhythm, but you can already see I just lift up my warp strips as I go to create this really striking pattern. And my last one goes over. So it went, the green weft went under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. And then what I want to do is pack my weft all the way up to the top of my warp strips and try to really get it tight in there. Awesome. So if you wanted to do something slightly off, you could just change it. So on the next one, if I want a checkerboard look, I'd go over on this one, opposite of what I did above. So over, then under, over, then under, over, then under. You can see you have to kind of wiggle it around a bit. You could do this with plain white paper. You could even try doing it with 2 sheets of white paper and see if it works, or print paper that's already got printed words. Oops, I went under, I should go over there. On it, old mail that your family says is okay to use. Try weaving them together, see what happens if it has text on it. So you can even do it with scrap paper or newspaper, or paper bag would be kind of cool to do this with. So I've already got a very cool pattern going. Here's an example of one that got really complex that we followed an actual pattern with, but you can see that it was just a variety of over, under, over, under, over, 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 under, over, 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 under, over, under, over. Even a really complex design is still made up of over and under. And if you look at woven things around you, whether it's a blanket or a rug, things you've seen around you, they still follow some sort of that over under pattern regardless. So you'll see on this one, I experimented with doing 2 wefts in a row, the same, to see what that would look like. Have fun experimenting. If you need to use glue to hold things in place, feel free to.